friend, it's Hannele here, and this is the Freedom Pivot podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Today's guest is Caroline Thor. She's a professional organizer and KonMari consultant, a podcast host, and a mother of 3 neurodivergent kids. In this conversation, we talk about ADHD and entrepreneurship and how Caroline has built a business that fits her family life rather than forcing her life to fit her business. Caroline is one of those people who brings a calm energy into every space that she is in. And after having this conversation with her, I really understood why. One of the biggest themes that stayed with me is radical acceptance, letting go of how things should be and building systems that actually support real life. That's big. Here's Caroline. Hello, Caroline. I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to the Freedom Pivot podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've been so looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be fun.
Yes, me too. And I was just telling you that even though we've kind of known each other for some time now, I don't really know that much about your background. So I'm really, really interested in your story and how you got here where you are. And also, I feel that there are so many women listening who are navigating business, entrepreneurship, family, and then also this complexity of being like wired a little bit differently. So I think that there's so much that we can cover and maybe give some food for thought for people.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds great.
Yeah. But when we start, could you maybe share a little bit about who you are and what do you do right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, I'm Caroline. I am British, as you can probably tell from my accent, but I've been living in Germany for the last 20 years because I met some German guy while out hiking one day in England, and a few months later followed him back to Germany, and the rest, as they say, is history. And I am a KonMari consultant and professional organizer, which, as you will find out, is very different from what I originally trained to do. But I support women who are feeling overwhelmed in their homes, who need some clarity, who would like the systems that mean that their home is supporting their ideal lifestyle rather than becoming a very overpriced storage unit. And also looking at how we can get the family on board. And specifically, it's become women who are neurodivergent, specifically with ADHD. So that's sort of where my business is now and where I am now. I have 3 kids who are now aged 18, nearly 17 and 13. And they are all neurodivergent in their own way. Between us, we've got ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, and social anxiety. And although I have never been diagnosed, having gone through the diagnosis process with my children for ADHD, I suspect that they got it from me because I relate to a lot of their struggles. So that's sort of our background. And we have far too many pets. We now have 2 dogs, 2 cats, 2 rabbits. So it's busy, it's unpredictable, and I love it.
There's already so much to unpack there. But I'm interested in what does the everyday life look for you? Because there are so many pieces in that puzzle.
Exactly. Well, it's like anyone with kids, regardless of whether they're neurodivergent or not, it's unpredictable. Like one morning they're off to school, the next morning they're ill, the next morning school announces it's closed for whatever reason. And then I have the added complexity that my child with autism for they're now 13, since they were 8, they really haven't been in school full time. And we had 2 years where they really weren't in school at all. And since this September is the first time that they have managed to go to school pretty much full time. Although, as we're recording this, I have 2 of them, including them, at home with COVID. So again, my week has been turned on its head. So I can't plan anything. I literally cannot plan a day. I can't plan to go meet a friend in town for coffee of a morning because I never know whether they will go to school. if they do go to school, if school might phone and I have to go and pick them up. So I'm basically at home there as an emotional support and nervous system support. And it means that I can't really plan very much. I can do things like go out for walks with the dogs or go shopping for food and stuff. But other than that, during the week, I'm pretty much stuck at home, which is sort of why I've built the business I have, because it works with me being stuck at home and it actually gives me a lot of purpose. But it is unpredictable. The day is unpredictable.
That's so incredible because to me, you feel like such a the energy around you is so like about clarity and calmness, and then thinking about you kind of embody this clarity and calmness, and then you are living in the middle of all of that unpredictability. How is that? How is that possible?
It has changed. I didn't used to be calm. I used to be very overwhelmed with everything. And when my children were little, I was really a very stressed mum, and I would say not very present. I actually said on one of my podcast episodes that I recorded recently that if I was to ask my kids now how I was as a mum when they were little, I don't think I would like the answer.
Mm.
And it actually was the KonMari method, discovering it 14 years ago, that started to change things. As I started to build structure into our home and get rid of the clutter, my mental calmness just sort of increased. It was phenomenal, to the point that one day as we were leaving the house, after I'd done probably about half a year's work on decluttering and organizing, and the kids were little at the time. The eldest was 6 or 7. And we'd got our shoes on, we got our coats on, everyone had got what they needed. Getting 3 kids out of the house is always fun. And my middle daughter turned to me and she said, "Why are you a nicer mummy now?" And I was like, oh my goodness. Because it used to be so stressful. It used to be so, because I didn't know where their shoes were. Like the coats were missing, and I'd get snappy and short with them. And that changed when I knew where things were, when I wasn't feeling overwhelmed, when I didn't feel like every spare moment I should be tidying up the chaos. It really was a life-changing moment. I mean, Marie Kondo's book is called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying. She's not kidding. Not only has it changed that aspect, it's changed every aspect of my life as it happens. So that helped me find calm. And actually, my child who struggles the most is the person who has taught me the most about being calm, because we realized very quickly that when we reacted to the meltdowns, to the panic attacks, to the horrendous behaviors that were going on through no fault of their own, when we reacted in a loud way, it would make it worse. And we learned very quickly that the best thing to do is to just stay calm, not react at all, and to just really practice radical acceptance for everything that is going on. And that has been a huge learning curve. I think my other kids have benefited from that as well. I've certainly benefited from it. My husband really feels he has as well. It has made us better parents, and it has made us much more connected as a family, because we don't sort of just blow up. We'll just sort of stay calm and deal with things. And my dad once said to me in the middle of an episode that we were having, "I couldn't do that." And I was like, "You could. You have no choice. You have to do it." But it's sort of become how I am now. And I am actually really, really grateful for that, because it's a much nicer place to be in than being reactive all the time, which is how I used to be.
So did the KonMari method come first and then the deeper work about around radical acceptance? Or how would you describe that process?
Yeah, definitely. The KonMari method was the first sort of piece in all of this. And at that time, I didn't even realize that my kids were neurodivergent. This is something that has come in quite recent years since my youngest was 8. So that piece came first with the KonMari method. And then as we have gone through the journey with our youngest child and all the challenges they face, that is where the radical acceptance piece has come in through doing things like when they were very little, we did things like peaceful parenting online courses to try and work out how we could connect better with them, because we realized that what we'd done with the older children didn't work with them. And we've put a lot of work in. Last year we did a 12-week online course for PDA autism, and the whole of the first module for that, the whole of the first 4 weeks was just radical acceptance. And that was just amazing, because we were already part way there, but it sort of consolidated that what we were doing was correct, and as was what we all needed. And this lady that was running the course actually said something that was really interesting and quite profound, I think. And she said, you're not going to change your child. You're not going to change your living situation. So how can you create a life of joy with it as it is? And I was like, yeah. And I'd already started doing that through building my business. I've created a life that is joyful for me. I love what I do. But it was good to hear that from her. I was like, yes, we've been doing this right, intuitively, I think. But I think that's what a lot of people lack, this radical acceptance. So I've got a bit preachy about radical acceptance now.
Something about this word, like radical acceptance. It goes really deep. What does that mean to you, radical acceptance?
For me, it means just every situation that arises, just taking it as it is and not reacting. And in a calmer moment later, unpicking what that was and what that means, and if that was okay, and what would I do differently next time. Because I think if we're always if we're always wanting things to be different, then we're never happy. But if you can radically accept that this is how it is, the only thing you have control over is you. So you might as well just let the rest of it get on and just control the only thing you can control is your reaction in that moment. And I think that's whether it's to do with a child, whether it's to do with a job, whether it's to do with your neighbor annoying you, whether you're driving down the road and someone cuts you up and you're like, what? You can choose in that moment whether you're going to let it bother you or not. And I've learned, and it has been a real learning curve, not to let these things bother me. And that for me, I think, is what radical acceptance is.
That's so radical in terms of thinking about thinking about change and transformation, because there's so much wanting usually involved in changing things, that I want things different. I want things to be different. And then at the end, if you're the only one you can actually influence, then what's happening outside, all you can do is just accept it.
Yeah.
When you started with that, if we go back to your story, well, where would you start your story? Where would you like to start to say where did your story start?
I think probably my story. Oh, that's a really difficult question. My life as it is now, in terms of my business and my work, that definitely started when I first bought the KonMari book. 23rd of June it was.
You remember the date?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, 2014. And that's when that changed. But before that, I would say that my life changed when my first husband decided that he didn't want to be married anymore. Because if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be in Germany now. I wouldn't have the kids that I have, who are amazing, and I wouldn't change for anything. And my husband often says it's the best thing this guy ever did, and he's very grateful to him. So, yeah, and perhaps if I hadn't ended up moving to Germany, not knowing a word of German, like just not knowing this guy for very long, maybe I never would have picked that book up. Maybe that magazine that day that had an article about it wouldn't have crossed my path. So I think my story goes all the way back to that point, probably.
And when was that? What year?
2009 was the year that
Mm.
my first marriage broke up. Yeah.
So 16 years ago. And what were you doing back then?
I was teaching music.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
I knew you'd be excited about that. I trained, I studied music at university. I play cello, or I did play cello in a previous life. And yeah, so I studied music for 3 years at university, then did a degree in teaching, which in England only takes you a year, which is quite interesting. And after that, you're let loose. And I was teaching music, yeah, in a school in Stoke-on-Trent in England. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what I was doing at that point. And then from there, I moved on and became an assistant head teacher and was doing my head teacher training at the point when I met my husband, now husband Ralph. And I had my own house, I had my own car, I had a really good job. And this tall German guy says, "Move to Germany with me." And I was like, okay. And that was that.
Were you so much in love, or how did that happen?
This is I yes, yes. I was very smitten with him. Like yes, head over heels, I would say. But I'm always someone that has been very, very impulsive. And I do think, or spontaneous, I do think this is probably my neurodivergent tendencies. I'm the sort of person that would wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to buy a new car today, having never thought about it before, but then it has to happen on that day. I mean, I remember trailing around car showrooms for a whole day on a Saturday because that morning I decided I was getting a new car. And I do tend to do things without thinking it through too much. So when he said, "Would you move to Germany with me in 3 months' time?" I just said, yeah, okay. Not really thinking about the fact that, this would mean what do I do with my house? I'm not going to continue my head teacher training and all of this sort of stuff. You don't speak German. My parents were like, are you crazy? So, yeah, but I have a habit of just making things work. If I decide I'm doing it, I'll then follow through with it. So, yeah, so that was that. It wasn't easy coming to Germany not speaking German.
I can imagine.
Many a tear was shed in frustration at not understanding what was being said. But yeah, so that's sort of where all that started.
And did you continue your teaching work in Germany, or what happened?
Well, I did, and that was the weird thing because the only place I could teach at was an international school where they speak English. And there happened to be an international school very close to where we were going to be living, and they happened to need a part-time music teacher. So
Of
I'd flown
course.
over for a weekend, and on the Monday morning I had this interview and I got the job, and then we flew back to the UK and finalized everything, and then drove over that summer. Yeah. So that's where I started. And then I worked there for about a year and a half and then got pregnant with our first child. And at that point, I was quite happy to be a stay-at-home mum. That's what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed that. And then as the years went on, child number two, child number three, it started to become quite clear that going back to that job was going to be difficult, partly because they had different summer holiday times to the German schools. And it would have meant that like my kids weren't going to go to that school. So they would have different summer holidays to me, which just would have been crazy. So I ended up starting my own business. And this was my first sort of foray into entrepreneurship, where I was teaching classes to expats in Heidelberg, which is my nearest like city to me. Very beautiful city, if anyone wants a city recommendation for Germany. And I was doing sort of a combination of music and storytelling in English. I called it Talking Toddlers, and it was for mums who wanted to have something to do in English with their children. And that grew. That started off really small and ended up being sort of 3 mornings a week and Saturday mornings and going up to sort of age 6. And I started a new baby class for mums just to come and sing to their babies in English. It was beautiful. I loved it. It was so, so much fun. But I decided I ought to perhaps get some business advice. And there's a beautiful thing here where you can go as a female entrepreneur and they will give you 6 weeks of one-on-one coaching, sort of one session a week, where they tell you all the sort of what you need for German law for your business and all the rest of it. And one day the lady said to me, "Have you thought where this is going?" And I said, "No, just happily pottling along with it." And she said, "Do you really, when you're 60, want to be sitting on the floor singing the same songs?" And I didn't really take that on board at the time, but it sowed a seed. And I started to think, oh, yeah, am I going to keep singing this song every year for the rest of my life? And then COVID hit. And all our classes, of course, were cancelled. We weren't allowed to teach. And I happened to be scrolling around online and an ad popped up to train to become a KonMari consultant. And I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't know they even existed. And in my usual spontaneous way, I said, I remember exactly where we were. We didn't have dogs at that point. We were going out for a walk every day, my husband and I. And I remember exactly where we were on the track in this field. And I said to him, "I'm going to train to become a KonMari consultant." And he was like, "Oh, here we go." There have been other little ideas I've had over the years. I was like, "No, I think this would be really good because then I can help other women feel."
Yeah, because at that time you had already like experienced the
Yes.
transformation.
Yeah, exactly. And I was always saying to my friends, "Oh, you should really try the KonMari method. It just really calms you down and you feel back in control again." And I was like, imagine if I could help other women feel like that. And my husband was like, "Well, yeah, okay." And at that time, things were starting to get really difficult with our youngest child. We hadn't realized they were going into burnout. And the timing was just perfect because from that moment on, when schools went back, they couldn't go back. I mean, there was just no way, which meant I couldn't even go and teach my classes, even if I'd wanted to. I couldn't leave them. But I did this 3-day online course. I managed to persuade one of the other mums from my classes who I'd got to know really well, and I loved her. And she's actually a dance teacher, but she's American. I was like, "Could you take over my classes for the next little bit?" So she took over not the business. I did all the back end stuff, but she was teaching the classes for me. And I started to work with my one practice client at the weekends when my husband was home to be with our child, so that I could start to get my training to become a KonMari consultant. And then I never went back to my business because my child never went back to school. And I decided, well, if they're not going to be at school, I need to do something. So I'm going to start an online business. And it just all sort of snowballed from there. So I did an online course on how to grow an online business with Marie Forleo. It's called B School. And during that, she said, you need weekly content. You either
Mm.
need to be putting out a podcast, a blog, or a video every week. I was thinking, well, I'm not overly fond of being on video and I'm not overly fond of writing, but I'm quite like talking, as you can probably tell. So I'll do a podcast and the rest is history. So 3rd of June, 3 years ago, I started my podcast and I've not missed an episode since. I've not missed a week. And it's all just sort of grown from there.
I can totally see the value of what you call like being impulsive or maybe spontaneous, spontaneous, but like how this drives you. Like you're able to make those decisions very quickly.
Yeah, I don't overthink things. I mean, when I hear people say, "Oh, well, I've not started yet because I can't decide on the name," I'm like, nah, just start. I mean, I couldn't decide on a name either for my business, so I just use my name. I literally don't overthink anything. And sometimes that gets me in really hot water because I will randomly sign up for things that perhaps are costing a lot of money and not have really thought it through. I've made a lot of those mistakes with this business. But at the same time, I think every mistake you make, you learn something from, and it helps you evolve. And it's made me really good now at making the right decision. And it actually it causes me now to stop and think for at least 30 minutes before I hit the button.
That's a long time if you've already kind of decided and then you just need to sit with it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I'm always saying to my clients as well, and the ladies in my membership, if you're thinking about buying something, just stop, take some time. If it's online, put it in the basket, go back to it tomorrow. And I've the fact I've said that so many times over the last 2 years to my membership ladies, it's starting to sink in with me as well. I'm
You teach
practicing what
what
I
you need to
preach.
learn.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But when you said in the beginning that you are helping families and women with maybe who are neurodivergent themselves or have ADHD in their family or autism, how did that happen that this has become your focus in your business?
It just sort of has organically evolved. I think when I first started going to people's homes and working with them in person, nearly everyone that I went to either had an ADHD diagnosis themselves, like recently diagnosed, or their children were neurodivergent. And as we now know, this is a hereditary thing. So if your child has it, it's come from somewhere, which is why in my case, I would imagine it's me because my husband is very organized and level and not neurodivergent in the slightest. So I started to see this pattern that they were predominantly women with ADHD. And then I started my online membership, and I would say about 70% of those women have or suspect they have ADHD or were talking about their struggles and my little red flags going up going, ooh, that
I
sounds
know
to me.
that one.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know that one. So it's sort of evolved organically because that's the people that were coming to me because they need that support. They have tried other things and it's not worked for them. And what I was offering seemed to be really helping them and making a difference. So I don't have any sort of official training in this is what you do in order to get decluttered and organized when you have ADHD. But I've realized that because of my experience with my kids who have ADHD, because I know what my struggles have been and what now works for me, and because I've got this evidence of what a difference it's made for especially the ladies in my membership, it makes sense for me to have that as my niche. And also, I get so much joy from supporting these women. I absolutely love it when they message me and say, I've at last managed to do whatever it happens to be. And they've been struggling for so long. And at last, that room is, I mean, I got a message with some photos sent to me last week from a lady in the membership who has had a guest bedroom that she's literally not been able to get in for years. And it's cleared. And she's got a guest staying in it. And you're just like, wow, that's amazing. So that brings me so much joy. And I love seeing them grow as well and in their confidence in what they're capable of achieving.
What would you say that are the struggles? If there's someone listening and wanting maybe some peer support, what do the struggles look like?
It's a combination of things, and some people struggle with all of them, and some people only struggle with one of them. One thing is very much a case of if what we want to do has more than one step, the distraction between intending to put the thing away and actually putting the thing away, we're likely to get distracted in between and it gets put down somewhere because there were too many steps involved in the task. And that's why a lot of women with ADHD traits have a terrible problem with things like laundry. I mean, they've got mountains of laundry because there's too many steps involved to like sorting it, to putting it in, to getting it out, to getting it dry, to folding it, to putting it away. And it's just like, oh my, that's too overwhelming. So that's one thing. Another thing is procrastination. And I am the queen of procrastination. If I can procrastinate on something, like yesterday, I was very, I love the word discombobulated. It had thrown me that my kids were at home ill. My routine was gone. And as soon as my routine goes, I can't do anything anymore. I mean, I just wasted a whole day, which normally my weekdays are super productive. And like I have my routine and I walk the dogs and I sit at my laptop and I work until I have to pick someone up from school and I get all the things done. And I did nothing yesterday. It's like, as soon
You
as
took
that
care of your children.
I did take care. Well, no, I didn't really even do that because they were in their rooms like, well, you've got COVID. I don't want to see you. I will deliver food to your rooms. It for me, it's very much, and I think this is the case with a lot of the women I support. We're great if the system's working, but as soon as that first piece, like my school run, was gone, it throws me. I can't function anymore. And then I procrastinate. So rather than going, okay, just go down to your desk and sit down and start work, I find all these other things to do. I do procrastinating, I do decorating, whatever it happens to be, just not the actual thing I'm meant to be doing. And I actually don't like Sundays very much. I actually said to my husband on Sunday, I don't like Sundays. And I think it's because I don't have the structure.
There's
And
no structure.
we can't go out as a family because one of my children can't leave the house. And as it was this Sunday, we had two kids ill anyway. So we were sort of a bit stuck at home. And I just wander around not feeling like I'm doing very much. My ideal would actually be to go down to my office and just work all day because then I feel productive because I don't particularly like cleaning and doing the housework and stuff like that. So yeah, procrastination is a massive problem. Time blindness is also a huge issue. So people thinking, oh, I know I've got to leave the house in 15 minutes. So now I've got a bit of time, I will now do. And then they start on this thing that
Optimistic that I can do this.
optimistic. And then that makes them late because they then want to get that thing finished. And so this sort of thing. And the other thing, I think, well, there's loads of them, but another thing is very much overwhelm, not actually knowing how to start. And this is a bit like with me with my procrastination thing. I know I've got things to do, but if I don't know what that first step is to get me rolling, then it's just not going to happen. And this is where I help the ladies in my membership so much, because they'll write to me and say, I need to do this. And I'll say, right, first of all, open the bag. As simple as that. Look what's inside the bag. Oh, right. Okay. Hadn't thought of doing that. And that sounds crazy. But when your brain is completely overwhelmed and you've got decision fatigue, like I don't know what to do, then not knowing what that first step is just means you just don't do it at all. And it's very hard to understand that if that's not something you struggle with. And my parents, who don't have any of these struggles at all, will very often say, well, you just do it. You just get on and do it. Don't be ridiculous. I was like, I can't. I literally can't. I just don't know where to begin. Whereas if you are someone who is neurodivergent, you very often have hyper focus on things that you're super interested in. And for me, that is my business. So for me, there is no work. It doesn't feel like work, because I could quite happily sit at my laptop and do everything I need to do for my business all day long. I will do it in the evenings. I'll do it in the morning before I get dressed. Let me work, because that's, if I'm focused on that, I love it. But anything else,
And I feel that there's so much shame attached to these struggles, because I'm in your membership. I'm one of the, even though I'm not neurodivergent myself, but my husband is. And uh, and for me, for example, when I had to organize our fridge, there's so much shame somehow attached to this not really moving forward, even though you know that I should be. Just do it, just do it. It doesn't really work, especially if there is this emotional layer attached to it. Is that something that you also see, that there are these emotions attached to this whole mess?
yeah, hugely, huge amount of shame. And even, as you say, when it's your fridge and you know you need to do it, it's like, well, how, maybe it even isn't even that dirty, or maybe there isn't even that much stuff in there that needs to be got rid of because it's out of date. But it's this like, what, why have I let this packet of whatever get out of date? What a waste of money. And there is shame attached to that. And for these women who feel that their homes have got way out of control, that they just don't know where to start, the shame of that is huge. I mean, these are people that don't feel they can invite people over at all and haven't done for years. And very often when I walk into people's homes who are feeling like that, I'll walk in and think, well, this looks okay. This is fine. But it's what's in their mind, that this is not good enough. My home isn't as good as it should be, or whoever comes over, their home's going to be tidier than mine, so they're going to judge me. It's this feeling of being judged, of not being good enough, of not being good at adulting. I hear this all the time. I can't adult. And that's really, really sad, because they've got so much else to offer. And this is why my message hugely, and especially on my Instagram account, this is what I am really trying to promote at the moment, is your home doesn't need to look like anyone else's. It just needs to be good enough for you. If you feel comfortable in it, it shouldn't matter what anyone else thinks. And therefore, what we're actually needing to work on is your mindset, not your home. Because my home is not amazingly tidied up. Everyone always says to me, oh, I bet your home's amazing. It's like, no, not really. Because I'm the sort of person that if I'm in the middle of doing something and I know that I have to take it to the post, or I have to finish mending something, I will leave it out on the side in a really prominent place. Because if I put it away, and this is another thing that women with ADHD struggle with, if it's put away, I will genuinely completely forget about it. It's out of sight, out of mind. And this is something that a lot of women with ADHD struggle with. And this is why they end up buying more stuff, because they've already bought the thing, put it away in a cupboard, genuinely forgot they've already got it. So they buy another one, and then that cycle happens again. And so my home has got things standing around all over it. I've now got myself trained that once it's dealt with, it gets put away. But I have to leave it out, otherwise I know it won't get dealt with. And it drives my husband crazy because there's like paper, it's like one piece of paper lying there. He's like, can't that go somewhere else? I was like, no, because if we move it, I will forget to pay that bill. It has to stay there till I've dealt with it. And then I've got a filing system and then it gets filed. But that interim means that we've got things lying around.
Well, there are so many challenges, but are there some blessings as well that come with these traits?
Yes, I do. I do think the spontaneity thing is great. I actually really like it because I don't overthink things. And I always feel really bad for people that spend so much time worrying about stuff and overthinking it because I don't have that problem. So yeah, that's definitely a blessing. The ability to hyper focus on something is massively a blessing. Although, of course, that has a downside because everything else will get left because you're too busy focusing on your thing you're focused on. But that is a blessing in that it means that I've been able to build a business in quite a short period of time in a way that works for me. Whereas if I've been overthinking it all and didn't have this hyper focus, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think also when you know that you struggle with things, it creates an enormous amount of empathy in you for other people. And I noticed this about all the women, or you've probably noticed this as well in the membership, the way they respond to each other, the amount of empathy that's there and understanding is phenomenal. And I really do believe that is because they get it. And it's not always to do with something that they're struggling with, but because they know that they have things they find difficult, they're able to empathize with other things with people. And I think that's a wonderful trait to have.
Yes. Yes, and I feel that there is somehow the discussions end up being about the mindset and the kind of the internal stuff rather than, of course, there are concrete tips and concrete steps that you can take, but then it's really about the radical acceptance that you talked about, being
Yeah,
fine with situations as they are,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that then frees the energy to maybe do something about it if you then consider it necessary. But maybe it can also be that, okay, maybe I'll think about it next week and not to worry about it too much.
yeah, definitely. And I think one thing I've actually learned from one of my members in the last couple of weeks, I always talk about your future self will thank you for the work. And she actually said to me, I can't even imagine what my future self would be like. I can't imagine myself out of this situation now. And so we had a big discussion about, okay, well, what changes do you need to make for you to feel calmer in your environment now? And that's what we'll work on. And we'll worry about future self later. Because actually, by making those changes now, she is doing something for her future self. But I think it is the mindset. It is about the habits. It is about the acceptance of the fact that this is where you are. And the other thing that is huge is the amount of shame that is attached to what has happened up until this point. Like, oh, I've spent all this money on all these clothes and I've never worn them, or they don't fit me anymore, or I've spent all this money on home appliances that I didn't really need because I got sucked in by the ads. And there is a huge amount of shame attached to that. And the mindset work you need to do on that for saying, well, okay, but that was then and you're here now and you've made a decision that you want to do it differently. So let's not worry about what's happened in the past. That was the past. And going forward, what are the mindset shifts we need to make sure we don't do that again? The awareness that when I'm about to click that button or buy that thing that I actually don't need it? What needs to happen for you to make that change? And so you're right. I think the mindset is actually bigger than the actual decluttering and organizing. Because unless you learn to do something different, nothing is going to change. You can declutter your whole home and organize it, but unless you do something different going forward, you will be back to square one again in 6 months, maybe less. It's
Exactly.
like when we tidy our living room and we're like, yay, the living room's tidied up. And then, like a few hours later, after the kids have been in, it doesn't look like you did anything because actually, all you did was move stuff around. It didn't have a home to go back to. It just got put somewhere else. So everyone's picked it up and brought it back again. And that's the mindset shift. Like, how are we going to do this differently?
Do you see this mindset and this radical acceptance and also the KonMari method, is that being reflected in your business and in your entrepreneur, the way you are as an entrepreneur? If you think about yourself as that music teacher days.
Yeah. I the whole KonMari method is rooted in what sparks joy and what supports your ideal lifestyle. And I do feel that within my business, there is a huge amount of joy. I see that when I do my live sessions. I did one last night and I had 18 women there and it was just fun. I mean, who would have thought you could rock up to talk about decluttering and organizing and have fun? I actually woke up to an email today from someone that was there saying that was so fun last night. So that joy, I think, in sort of accepting that, okay, this is the situation you were in, but let's make this fun. Let's find the joy in it. There can be joy in going through your stuff and making decisions and in the support that you get from each other. I think there's a great amount of joy in that. And for me, my membership has actually really surprised me because I now have a core group of women who have been there since the start for 2 years now. There's 8 or 9 of them that have been there now for 2 years and have now signed up for their third year. And one of them actually said to me this week in an email, she said, I don't come very often, but I just love knowing I'm part of this community because
Mm.
it's so supportive. And I think the community is actually what I've ended up being most proud of all the things that I've done. And also the community around my podcast as well. That's evolving into a little community too that supports each other. That's the thing that I think has surprised me. But that's, I think, very much rooted in the joy bit, and that's why
Mm.
it's happened.
Yeah, because you do it because of the joy and not
Mm.
because of the I need to run a business to make
Yeah,
money, for example.
yeah, absolutely.
As you know, the name of the podcast is The Freedom Pivot. Can you identify this kind of a pivotal moment in your? I know that you mentioned a few in the beginning, but what would you consider as your freedom pivot?
I, from a business point of view, the day I stood in that field and said to my husband, I'm going to train as a KonMari consultant. That was because that was a pivot from the business I was in to this new one. And I don't regret a minute of it. I mean, probably the biggest pivot was buying the book in that respect. Because if I hadn't bought that and applied the method in our home, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now. But from my sort of what I chose to take control of that day, I decided to train as a KonMari consultant, I guess, would be that moment.
That's lovely. And that came as a result of you transforming your own life with the method.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. If there is someone listening who is overwhelmed or struggling with all these struggles that you mentioned, what would you like to say to them?
I would like to say you're not broken. You're not doing anything wrong. You just haven't yet worked out the right system for how your brain needs it to be. And actually, that is different for everybody. I don't think there is a one size fits all. I think I show up slightly differently for every single person in my membership because they've all got slightly different needs. And what works for one is not going to work for the other. So you're not broken and you can change it. I really, really believe you can.
Yes. Yes, and as a member of your community, I rarely go there, but just to have you somehow present in my life and the community, that really gives me the it's like a positive force to do something and do those small steps, which I think that you are expert in, like this, do this tiny bit and that already moves a mountain if it's like 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I had a lady who has been a member since the start. So she's been paying me every month for 2 years. And I did message her because she's never come to any of the live sessions. She's in the Facebook group, but I've never actually seen her presence there, posting or commenting. And so I messaged and said, look, I think maybe it'd be better for you if you just cancel your membership. I don't know that you're getting anything out of it. And she wrote back and said, I disagree. Just knowing I'm part of it is enough. So, okay, good.
It's not always the visible work that is the
No,
thing.
yeah. And that's something I need to learn as well, that if people aren't showing up, it doesn't mean that they're not appreciating it or getting anything out of it.
Exactly. Exactly. Tell me what you're currently working on, and is there a way that people can work with you, and how do they find you, and all of that?
Oh, I'm currently working on a new branch of my membership, which I am so excited about, which is specifically for women with ADHD. So my membership is for anybody that needs support with their homes, but I now have a new branch that is literally focused on that. And I'm really, really excited about that. I think this is going to be huge and very different to anything I've done before. So that is really fun. The best place to find out about me is either at my website, but that's currently under construction. So it's probably not the best place, but I'm very, very active on Instagram, caro.thor at Instagram. And then my podcast, people can get weekly annoying tips from me in their ear.
And what is your podcast called?
It's called Living Clutter Free Forever.
I love that name.
Yes, I love that name too.
I will put all the links to the show notes so that people can find you.
Thank you.
But thank you so much, Caroline. It's been so wonderful to talk to you and hear about your story and everything behind your business and how it's running today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.